take that fruit he's holding in his hand. Just one bite and you'll be swinging with the band. If you hang from that old Viperman.
So yes, roll cassette, XTR rear derailleur with a single spring mod, as smooth as butter. Well, almost. But it actually worked a lot better than I expected. That said, there's probably very few reasons to actually run it this way. But yeah, I'll see if I can think of something before this video ends. But first, let's get into the setup process. And assuming everything is set up for the intended cassette, like in this case, which this is the medium cage, this is supposed to run on a like 45 cassette. So assuming that the chain and everything is set up for that cassette, you don't have to do anything when it comes to the chain. It will be the right chain length, even for the smaller road cassettes, which is kind of counterintuitive for me coming from all the road derailleurs the last 10-15 years. First instinct is maybe to shorten the chain, but if you actually look closer, if I put the chain in the smallest cog here and simulating shortening the chain by pulling the cage, you can actually see what happens. The chain wrap actually gets worse, and that will result in degraded shifting performance, especially on those smaller cogs. So I hope that made sense. Luckily, the only thing really there is to do now is to swap out my original wheel here with the 10 to 45 cassette and swap in my road wheel here with an 11 to 34 road Dura Ace cassette. And yeah, that's pretty much everything you need to do, almost. Because the free hub bodies are different between HG and microspline. Also, if you have different hubs, there's a high risk that you need to kind of adjust the indexing a bit. In my case, going from the carbon tie to the extralight hub, there's only like 2 or 3 clicks to the optimal like indexing there, and in that case I can basically leave it as is. It is that forgiving as long as you make sure that the derailleur hanger is straight. 1 or 2 clicks, no issues there. I was also very lucky that the brake rotor lines up exactly in the same spot between those 2 hubs, so I don't need to touch my brakes at all there. Happy days, happy days. Now, what about the B gap then? And I did try running this without touching any other adjustments because, yeah, I wanted to be as simple as possible. It did work, like, I would say acceptable, but I did have some delayed shifts here and there. Definitely felt that there's more to gain by doing some other tweaks. So I went back to the B screw and adjusted this. Luckily, there's not much guessworking here because we have that mark on the rear of the cage. I just lined up that little arrow mark to the big cog, like just in line with the bottom of the teeth, and yeah. After that, it was pretty much flawless out on the road, at least. In the stand, I still feel like it wasn't like 100%. But as soon as I was outside and actually had some more tension on the chain when shifting, I didn't have a single like miss shift or delayed shift or whatever. The only thing that kind of made it obvious that it was maybe not the native setup, so to speak, is that the shifts down to the smaller cogs, especially on the far end of the cassette, was kind of a bit more noisier than I'm used to on the road setup, for example. That dunk. Yeah, that sound was just a little bit more noticeable into my ears. Admittedly, I have very big ears, so they pick up a lot of noise. Now, I could have left it there, but I would really wanted to try something that I alluded to in the first video I did about the whole XTR stuff. And that is take a look inside this cage, because, you know, they changed the clutch to feature 2 springs instead. And if I remove 1 spring, what will happen? Another pretty meaningless operation, but it had to be done. All right, so let's see if we can disassemble this. And this works pretty much as you would expect from a Shimano derailleur. We need to remove this to unwind the springs, but to be able to do that, we definitely need to move the derailleur a bit out, otherwise that won't work. So like so, remove this stopper screw like so, and not kill my fingers, like so. And this is a cover from what I understand. I'm going to use one of these kind of, well, this particular one came with a kit for disassembling phones and stuff like that, but I don't think you want to use a metal screwdriver or anything. That's gonna leave some marks, I think. Yeah, so this is definitely just plastic. So, and then we have the hex key. We should be able to remove this. So this is a 5mm, I think. Yep, it is. Quite stiff. I think that's loose now. Check this out. Double spring action. Damn. So yeah, I want to try and see if I can run just one spring and see if yeah, just see what happens basically. I have this for reference. This is basically a spring from the GRX derailleur, and I think it's even smaller than this one. So what I'm thinking now is to just run the inner spring, because that's the one that's closest to what you found in Shimano's other derailleurs. So yeah, let's see if we can do that. Oh yeah, that was pretty easy. So I better just take a close inspection of this so I can reference the video when eventually we put this back together. By the way, this is pretty damn light. Speaking of light, I reckon we should see how much weight we save by removing that spring. 16.5 grams. That's not a bad saving for this pretty dense piece of kit. Not bad, not bad. And if you can see here, you basically have a notch there where you can hook the spring. There's pretty much no other place to put it, so it shouldn't be very hard. There, it's there, still there. Let's see then. Should be fine, should be fine. So just need to wind this back in place and insert the stopper again. I always need to do a double take and figure out exactly which direction to wind this up, because yeah, I've done the mistake before and turning this the wrong way and destroying spring. But yeah, so should be this way, because this should tension this way. So that's back in place. Oh yeah, it's definitely less stiff now. And this cover I should just be able to put back like so. Yeah, just from memory, this feels very similar to like a road derailleur now, like a Dura-Ace derailleur or something like that. So let's get this back on the bike and see how this goes. Now, did that do anything in the end? I mean, unsurprisingly, the tension of the cage became less. In my very unscientific test here, before and after, I went from about 2.9 kilos to about 1.3, 1.4-ish. To my very sensitive fingers, it kind of feels like a non-clutched road derailleur in terms of tension. Out on the road though, it kind of didn't make much difference at all. Not that I could feel, at least. I was hoping that that little clunky noise would be a little less pronounced, but I can't say. I still think I hear that ka-dunk downshift noise, upshift noise. So yeah, it didn't do much. And of course, with the lower tension, taking this out on really bumpy gravel would not be ideal anyway. So yeah, like I said, probably not a reason at all to do this. And I mean, as I said in the beginning, there's not really many reasons to do any of this really, other than to satisfy my curiosity. And if I'm curious, I'm sure there might be one or two people out there that's curious as well. So there we go. If I think about it, the only real scenario I can see myself doing this, like for real, for proper reasons, so to speak, is if my road bike broke down and I knew I had a really flat ride that I, for some reason, wanted to really have like road tight gearing in terms of gaps and stuff like that. That's probably the only thing I can think of. But that's really kind of grasping at straws and whatever that saying is. Even if I wanted to do like a permanent road setup in 1x mode with an 11-34 cassette, for example, I wouldn't go this route. It would make more sense to just keep a straight up road derailleur or a GRX 2x derailleur for that. It would probably be a bit lighter and smoother setup. You could also argue that instead of changing stuff back here, you just change to a bigger chainring in the front instead. But that brings that little point up, then we actually need to change the chain or get a longer chain to make that work. And practicality-wise, is that the word? It doesn't make sense at all for me in that case. But each to their own. If you can find another reason to do this, feel free to comment down below. I do think there's some good information coming from this though, even though this particular one is maybe not that useful. And that is, I'm pretty sure now that you could easily get the XTR or the XT or either the GRX, the long cage version, the SGS or SGS, the long cage version that's made for an 10-51 cassette. You could easily go down to the lighter 9-45 or 10-45 if you wanted to, save some weight and yeah, get that little bit of different range on the cassette. I'm pretty confident that would work pretty much flawlessly as long as the original chain length is set to the intended cassette, so 11-51 in that case. Now for me, I'm pretty much done testing this. I'm satisfied with my findings. I will now put the spring back in the derailleur and I will actually tear this whole thing down, because I think all this stuff maybe needs to go on something more appropriate. Stay tuned.